5 years after the fall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Zara al-Rashid stood in the same crystalline chamber where humanity had once been rejected. But everything about the space had changed. Where once 47 species had sat in carefully arranged hierarchies based on age and supposed wisdom, now over 200 species gathered in a configuration that emphasized equality and cooperation. The chamber itself had been redesigned by a joint committee of architects from 30 different species. Gone were the concentric rings that had literally elevated some species above others. In their place was a complex geometric arrangement that allowed every delegation to see and be seen by every other, with the central speaking platform accessible from any direction. "The Galactic Assembly will come to order," announced Speaker Pro Tem Korth, the former general of the Steelclaw Imperium, who had become one of the Alliance's most effective diplomats. His translated voice carried none of the condescension that had characterized council proceedings. "Today we address the final petition for membership in the Galactic Assembly," Korth continued. "Representatives of the species known as the Quantum Architects have requested to join our alliance." Zara looked at the delegation of beings that existed as shifting patterns of organized energy, creatures so advanced that they had transcended physical form, millions of years before humanity had even evolved. They were the kind of ancient, powerful entities that the old council would have automatically granted membership based on their obvious superiority. The Quantum Architect's speaker, a geometric pattern of light that called itself Prime Configuration Delta, addressed the assembly. "Honored representatives, our species has observed the transformation of galactic civilization with great interest. The principles upon which your alliance is founded represent a level of societal evolution that we had not believed possible." Representative Vexley of the Rigel Commerce Guild raised a tentative objection. "Prime Configuration Delta, with respect, your species possesses technology and capabilities far beyond anything in our collective experience. What could beings of your advancement possibly gain from alliance with younger species?" The energy pattern that was Delta shifted into configurations that conveyed amusement. Representative Vexley, your question reflects the old paradigm that the Alliance has so thoroughly discredited. We do not seek membership because of what we might gain, but because of what we might contribute to a civilization that has proven the value of diversity and cooperation. Zara smiled as she watched the proceedings. The question and answer session that followed was unlike anything that would have occurred under the old council system. Instead of formal presentations and predetermined votes, it became a genuine discussion about the nature of galactic citizenship and the responsibilities that came with it. The crystal hierarchies, whose representative had once dismissed humanity as too young for consideration, now asked probing questions about the Quantum Architect's commitment to the Alliance's core principle, that no species was expendable and no world was acceptable. Collateral damage. The former council species had learned hard lessons during the transition to the new order. Many of them had struggled to adapt to a system where status came from contribution rather than age, where decisions were made through consensus rather than decree. But those who had embraced the change had found something they hadn't experienced in millions of years: the excitement of genuine progress. "Prime Configuration Delta?" asked Dr. Shima, the refugee scientist who had become the Alliance's director of xenobiological research. "Your species has the capability to exist independently of any alliance or cooperation. What assurance can you provide that you won't abandon us if circumstances become difficult?" The energy pattern that was Delta shifted into what appeared to be a more serious configuration. "Dr. Shima, we have observed that no species, regardless of its individual power, can achieve its full potential in isolation. The Alliance has demonstrated that cooperation multiplies capabilities in ways that no amount of individual advancement can match. We seek membership not as a convenience, but as a necessity for our continued growth." The debate continued for hours, but Zara could see that the outcome was never really in doubt. The Quantum Architects had proven their commitment to Alliance principles through their actions during the Reconstruction period, providing technology and expertise to help rebuild worlds damaged during the war. When the vote was finally called, it was unanimous. The Quantum Architects were welcomed as the 201st member species of the Galactic Assembly. As the session concluded, Zara found herself approached by a familiar figure, Sub-Magistrate Yilth, the former council representative who had once tried to convince humanity to accept their rejection. He now served as a special advisor on transitional governance, helping former council worlds adapt to the new system. Ambassador al-Rashid, he said, his crystalline form ringing with what she had learned to recognize as contentment. I wanted to thank you personally for the Assembly's decision to grant our species a second chance. Many of us feared that our past actions would preclude any role in the new order. Sub-Magistrate, the Alliance has always believed in the possibility of redemption through changed behavior. Your species' cooperation during the transition period and your efforts to make amends for past policies have been noted and appreciated. Yilth's form shifted through several harmonic frequencies before settling into a pattern that conveyed deep emotion. We ruled the galaxy for millions of years, convinced of our own wisdom and righteousness. It took a species barely a century into spaceflight to show us how wrong we were. The irony is not lost on us. The important thing, Zara replied, is that you were willing to learn. That's all we've ever asked of anyone. Later that day, Zara stood in her office overlooking the transformed capital city of Nexus Prime. Where once the crystalline towers had stood in isolated splendor, now they were connected by bridges and walkways that allowed beings from hundreds of different species to interact freely. The city had become a living symbol of the Alliance's core belief that diversity was strength, not weakness. Her contemplation was interrupted by an incoming message from Earth. Director Marcus Chen, now serving as the Alliance's coordinator for galactic defense, appeared on her communication screen. Zara, I wanted to give you a heads up about something that's going to be announced at tomorrow's session. We've received first contact with a civilization from outside our galaxy. Zara felt her pulse quicken. How far outside? About 60 million light-years. The Andromeda Galaxy. They call themselves the Synthesis, and they claim to represent a galactic alliance similar to ours. Apparently, word of what we've accomplished here has spread further than we thought possible. Are they requesting diplomatic contact? Better than that. They're requesting a formal alliance between galactic superpowers. Zara, they're treating us as equals to their own civilization, which spans an entire galaxy and includes over 10,000 species. Zara sat down heavily in her chair. Marcus, that's incredible. What did we tell them? We told them the truth, that any alliance would have to be approved by the full assembly, and that we don't make decisions for our member species. But Zara, there's something else. The Synthesis sent us a gift as a gesture of good faith. What kind of gift? Complete technical specifications for faster-than-light communication across intergalactic distances. They wanted to make it easier for our civilizations to talk to each other. Zara laughed, though she felt tears forming in her eyes. Of course they did. That's exactly what the Alliance would do in their position. The galaxy has come a long way from the days when the Council hoarded technology to maintain power. These beings looked at our civilization and saw something worth emulating and cooperating with. After the transmission ended, Zara walked out onto her office balcony and looked up at the alien stars visible in Nexus Prime's night sky. Somewhere out there, in a galaxy so distant that its light had taken millions of years to reach them, another civilization was facing the same challenges that had once seemed insurmountable to the species of the Milky. Wait, and they were looking to the Alliance as an example of how those challenges could be overcome. The rejection that had once seemed like humanity's greatest humiliation had become the catalyst for the greatest transformation in galactic history. The ugly lions had not just found their place in the savannah. They had convinced the entire ecosystem that cooperation was better than predation. Tomorrow, the Galactic Assembly would begin discussions about establishing formal relations with an extragalactic civilization. In the months and years to come, they would face new challenges and new opportunities that would test everything they had built. But tonight, Zara allowed herself a moment of simple satisfaction. Humanity had proven that being different wasn't a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be celebrated. They had shown the galaxy that youth and inexperience could be advantages when combined with determination and an unwillingness to accept that things had to remain the way they had always been. The HFY species that had once been told they were too primitive for galactic civilization had become the architects of a new kind of society, one based on the radical idea that every voice deserved to be heard and every life. The Nexus Prime system had been transformed into the most formidable fortress in galactic history. Ancient weapons platforms that had slept for millions of years now formed concentric rings of destruction around the Council's capital world. Automated defense stations, each the size of a small moon, monitored space with sensors that could detect a single ship from light years away. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UNS Prometheus, surrounded by holographic displays showing the deployment of forces that defied comprehension. The Alliance fleet numbered over 10,000 ships representing 137 different species. Across from them, the Council's final stand involved every vessel they could still command. Nearly 8,000 ships drawn from ancient reserves and core world defense fleets. "Admiral," reported Commander Wright from the intelligence station, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 more Council vessels. That brings the total defections to over 300 ships since we entered the system." Sarah nodded grimly. Even now, facing the end of their civilization, individual Council commanders were choosing conscience over loyalty. The revelations about the Council's willingness to sacrifice entire species had shattered the moral authority that had held their alliance together for millions of years. "Any word from the Council leadership?" she asked. "High Magistrate Zizkith has rejected all communication attempts. Intelligence suggests they're activating something called the Genesis Protocol." Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. "Get me a direct line to Alliance intelligence. I want everything we have on Genesis Protocol, and I want it 5 minutes ago." The answer came from Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the xenobiologist who had first analyzed the Devourer threat years earlier. Her image appeared on the command display, her expression grave. "Admiral, we've decoded the Council archives. Genesis Protocol is their ultimate failsafe. If they can't maintain control of galactic civilization, they intend to destroy it completely and start over with a carefully selected population of worthy species. Define destroy it completely. They're planning to detonate the galactic core. The resulting chain reaction would sterilize roughly 60% of inhabited systems and render most of the remaining space uninhabitable for millions of years. The Council has underground bunkers on selected worlds that could survive the event." Sarah stared at the tactical display, trying to comprehend the magnitude of such genocidal ambition. "How many beings would die?" "Conservative estimate? 800 billion sentient beings across 4,000 species. It would be the largest act of deliberate genocide in galactic history." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. The Alliance had come to Nexus Prime expecting a final military engagement. Instead, they faced an enemy willing to destroy the galaxy, rather than allow it to be governed by different principles. "Time to implementation?" Sarah asked, unknown. "But our sensors are detecting massive energy buildups in the restricted sections of Nexus Prime. They're definitely preparing something that requires enormous power generation." Sarah looked around the command center at officers from a dozen different species, all of them working together with the kind of cooperation that the Council had claimed was impossible between younger civilizations. The irony was bitter. The galaxy's supposed guardians were planning its destruction while the species they had dismissed as too primitive were united in trying to save. Signal all Alliance forces," she ordered. "Emergency assault protocols are now in effect. We're going in." What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. The Alliance fleet didn't advance in the careful formations and elegant maneuvers that characterized traditional galactic warfare. Instead, they attacked like a living organism, with different species contributing their unique capabilities to a coordinated assault that adapted in real time to changing conditions. Human ships provided electronic warfare capabilities that confused ancient targeting systems. Rigel Commerce Guild vessels built for speed and maneuverability delivered precision strikes against key defensive nodes. The Vanguard Coalition brought centuries of experience fighting impossible odds, their commanders coordinating fleet movements with an intuitive understanding of asymmetric warfare. But the most important contribution came from the newest Alliance members, former Council species who understood the defensive systems of Nexus Prime because they had helped design them. Crystal Hierarchy ships used their deep knowledge of quantum engineering to identify critical weaknesses in the energy barriers protecting the planet. Kalani Federation vessels, with their advanced sensor technology, mapped the hidden weapon platforms that earlier reconnaissance had missed. The Council's defenses, designed to repel attacks by conventionally thinking enemies, struggled to adapt to the Alliance's cooperative approach. Automated systems that had been programmed to respond to specific threat patterns found themselves facing attacks that didn't match any historical precedent. "Admiral, Breakthrough in Sector 7, reported the tactical officer. Alliance forces have penetrated the outer defensive ring. We're detecting massive secondary explosions throughout the defensive grid. Sarah watched as the holographic display showed the Council's carefully constructed defenses collapsing under the pressure of an assault that attacked from every direction simultaneously. But she also saw something that worried her. The energy readings from Nexus Prime were continuing to climb. They're not stopping Genesis Protocol, she realized. Even with their defenses failing, they're going ahead with galactic destruction. The answer to that problem came from an unexpected source. Captain Rodriguez, who had survived the destruction of the UNS Defiant and been given command of the fast attack vessel UNS Retribution, transmitted a priority message to the fleet. Admiral, this is Rodriguez. I've got an idea, but it's going to require perfect timing and absolute trust from every ship in the fleet. Explain. The Genesis device requires a sustained energy input for approximately 17 minutes to reach critical mass. If we can disrupt that energy flow at exactly the right moment, the feedback should destroy the device instead of activating it. But the disruption has to come from inside the planet's defensive grid. Sarah understood immediately. You're talking about a suicide run. I'm talking about doing what humans do best, refusing to accept that the impossible is actually impossible. Admiral, we came here to save the galaxy. I can't think of a better way to finish the job. Before Sarah could respond, communications channels throughout the Alliance fleet lit up with volunteers. Ship after ship requested permission to join Rodriguez's assault, including vessels from species that had barely known humanity existed a few years earlier. No, Sarah said firmly. Captain Rodriguez, this is not a suicide mission because we're not going to let you do it alone. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're all going in together. The final assault on Nexus Prime involved the entire Alliance fleet in a coordinated descent through defensive fire that would have destroyed any conventional attack force. But the Alliance had learned something that the Council had forgotten in their millions of years of careful management. When beings fight for principles they believe in, they become capable of achievements that defy rational calculation. Ships that should have been destroyed by defensive fire survived through sheer determination and the support of their allies. Crews that should have been overwhelmed by impossible odds found reserves of courage they hadn't known existed. Commanders who had never worked together before coordinated their efforts with the precision of a single mind. The UNS Retribution, leading a formation of nearly 1,000 ships, broke through Nexus Prime's final defensive perimeter, just as the Genesis device reached 90% of critical mass. Rodriguez and her crew had 7 minutes to penetrate the most heavily defended structure in the galaxy and manually sabotage a weapon that could destroy 800 billion lives. They had 6 minutes and 43 seconds to spare. The explosion that followed was visible from orbit as the Genesis devices accumulated energy discharged harmlessly into Nexus Prime's upper atmosphere. The Council's ultimate weapon, designed to destroy galactic civilization, had been turned into the largest fireworks display in history. High Magistrate Zezkith stood in his command center, watching as his ancient order collapsed around him. Through the massive windows of the crystalline tower, he could see Alliance ships landing throughout the capital city. His security forces had laid down their weapons rather than fire on beings who had just saved the galaxy from destruction. When the doors to his command center opened, Sirith expected to see human soldiers coming to arrest him. Instead, he found himself facing Admiral Sarah Chen, accompanied by representatives from dozens of Alliance species, but no weapons or guards. High Magistrate, Sarah said quietly, I'm placing you under arrest for conspiracy to commit genocide. But more importantly, I'm here to ask you a question. Why? You had millions of years to build something better. Why did it come to this? Zukith looked around the command center where he had spent centuries making decisions that affected the fate of civilizations. The displays still showed the positions of fleets and the status of worlds, but the power to command them was gone forever. Because, he said finally, we forgot that civilization is not. The first shots of the Galactic War were fired not by massive dreadnoughts or ancient weapons of mass destruction, but by a small human corvette named the UNS Defiant, responding to a distress call from a mining station on the edge of nowhere. Captain Lisa Rodriguez had been conducting routine patrol duties in the outer veil when the emergency transmission reached her ship. The mining platform Gamma-7 was under attack by what appeared to be Council forces, despite being deep inside Alliance territory. "Captain, I'm reading 6 Council destroyers in attack formation around the platform," reported her tactical officer. "They're not responding to our hails, and the mining station is taking heavy damage." Rodriguez looked at her command crew, knowing that her next decision would likely trigger the war that everyone had been dreading. The Council fleet outnumbered her corvette by 6-1, and her ship carried only a crew of 43 against their combined complement of over 2,000. By every conventional measure, attacking would be suicide. "All hands, this is the captain," Rodriguez announced over the ship's communication system. "Council forces are attacking civilian targets in Alliance space. We're going in to assist. Remember your training, trust your crewmates, and show these ancient bastards what humans do when someone threatens innocent people." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The UNS Defiant, using tactics that no Council War College had ever taught, systematically dismantled a force 6 times its size in just under 20 minutes. The key was unpredictability combined with absolute ruthlessness. While the Council destroyers maneuvered for elegant energy duels, the Defiant launched a cloud of self-guided kinetic projectiles that behaved more like a swarm of angry insects than traditional missiles. When the Council ships adapted their point defense systems, the projectiles revealed their true nature. Each one contained a small fusion warhead programmed to detonate at optimal range for maximum electromagnetic disruption. With their shields down and sensors scrambled, the Council ships were sitting targets for the Defiant's primary weapons, a pair of relativistic mass drivers that fired projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. At those velocities, even a small piece of metal became a devastating weapon. But the real shock came when the Council flagship attempted to ram the much smaller human vessel. Rodriguez ordered her crew to abandon ship and detonate the Defiant's fusion reactor in a controlled explosion that gutted the attacking destroyer and damaged 2 others beyond. Repair. The 43 crew members of the UNS Defiant survived in escape pods and were rescued by Alliance ships that arrived hours later. More importantly, they had sent a message that resonated across the galaxy. Humans would not only fight impossible odds, they would win by rewriting the definition of victory itself. Admiral Sarah Chen received the after-action report while coordinating the Alliance defense from her flagship, the UNS Prometheus. The massive command vessel had been designed by human engineers who had studied every major fleet engagement in galactic history and concluded that most starship battles were fought with entirely wrong assumptions about what space combat should look like. "Admiral, incoming priority transmission from Earth Command," announced her communications officer. "It's Director Marcus Chen." Sarah's father appeared on the main display, his expression grim but determined. Behind him, she could see the controlled chaos of Earth's primary military command center as officers coordinated the defense of 12 human worlds and 31 allied species. "Sarah, the Council has formally declared the Alliance a terrorist organization and authorized the use of what they're calling pacification protocols against all member species. They're not just trying to defeat us militarily, they're trying to justify genocide. What's our response? Phase 2 of the Prometheus protocols is now active. Every Alliance world is broadcasting something the Council never expected us to have. Complete records of their classified communications for the past 50 years. Sarah felt a chill of anticipation. Human intelligence services had been far more active than anyone suspected, apparently. What did we find? Evidence that the Council has been deliberately allowing threats like the Devourers and Void-Touched to attack client species. They've been using these crises to maintain control, letting entire civilizations be destroyed to prove their point about the need for Council protection. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. They've been sacrificing entire species for political control. Worse than that, we found records of Council ships actively preventing rescue attempts during Devourer attacks. They let the Helix Nebula colonies be consumed when they could have intervened, just to maintain the illusion that only Council core worlds were truly safe. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah to contemplate the magnitude of what her father had just revealed. The Alliance had not just discovered evidence of Council corruption, they had found proof that the galaxy's supposed protectors were responsible for the deaths of billions of innocent beings. Within hours, The revelations were being broadcast on every communication network in known space. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Species that had remained neutral suddenly demanded Council explanations. Client worlds that had supported the Council for millennia began declaring independence. Most shocking of all, 3 Council member species formally withdrew and requested immediate alliance membership. The Kalani Federation, whose representative had once dismissed humanity as too young for galactic responsibility, announced that they had lost confidence in the moral authority of the Council system. The Crystal Hierarchies, ancient beings of living mineral who had been Council members for over 1 million years, issued a statement declaring that the preservation of galactic civilization requires the replacement of its current leadership. High Magistrate Zikith watched his carefully constructed alliance dissolve in real time as species after species abandoned the Council. In desperation, he authorized what had been unthinkable just weeks earlier: the activation of weapons that had been forbidden since the War of Dissolution. "Deploy the Stellar Lances," he ordered. "Target the human home system. If we can eliminate Earth, the Alliance will collapse." The Stellar Lances were weapons from the galaxy's dark age, planet killers that could ignite a star and sterilize entire solar systems. They had been banned by Universal Treaty, locked away in hidden vaults and guarded by automated systems programmed to prevent their use except in cases of galactic extinction events. Admiral Vexthis stared at his commander in horror. "Sir, the Stellar Lances are prohibited by every interstellar treaty in existence. Using them would make us worse than any threat we've ever faced. The humans have already destroyed galactic civilization," Zaketh replied coldly. "We are simply recognizing that fact and taking appropriate action." But the Council had made a critical error. The same intelligence network that had uncovered their historical crimes had also infiltrated their current operations. Even as the ancient weapons were being prepared for deployment, Alliance forces were moving to intercept them. The Battle of the Nexus Vaults would be remembered as the moment when humanity proved that courage and innovation could triumph over any technological advantage. A joint Alliance fleet, led by the UNS Prometheus and including ships from 18 different species, assaulted the most heavily defended military installation in Council space. The vaults were protected by automated defense systems that had been perfected over millions of years. Energy shields that could stop stellar-level bombardment. Drone swarms programmed with the combat experience of every major galactic conflict. Weapons that manipulated fundamental forces to create localized space-time distortions. The Alliance forces bypassed them all by doing something no previous attacker had ever attempted. They cooperated. While human ships provided electronic warfare coverage that confused the automated systems, Rigel engineers deployed devices that interfered with the quantum processors controlling the drones. Vanguard Coalition warriors, who had spent centuries fighting impossible odds, provided tactical coordination that maximized the effectiveness of every ship in the fleet. But the decisive factor was something uniquely human: the willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause larger than themselves. When the Vault's final defense systems activated and began collapsing local spacetime to prevent intrusion, Captain Elena Vasquez of the UNS Courage flew her ship directly into the distortion field, using her vessel's destruction to create a quantum resonance that destabilized the entire defensive grid. The Stellar Lances were captured intact, and more importantly, their control codes were broadcast throughout the galaxy along with detailed instructions for permanently disabling them. Within days, similar weapons hidden on dozens of worlds had been neutralized by local populations who finally understood the true nature of the power that had ruled them for so long. The Council's last desperate gambit had not only failed, it had provided the Alliance with irrefutable proof that the old order was willing to commit genocide to maintain power. The few remaining Council loyalists began defecting in droves, until even the core worlds themselves were facing internal rebellions. But the war was far from over. Cornered and desperate, the Council's remaining forces began falling back to their. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called for the first time in 3 centuries. High Magistrate Zikth stood before the assembled representatives of 47 civilizations, his forearms gesturing with barely controlled agitation as holographic displays showed the rapidly changing political landscape of the galaxy. "Esteemed colleagues," Zikith began, his translated voice carrying undertones of concern that transcended species barriers. "We face an unprecedented situation. The human-led Frontier Alliance now controls 38% of galactic territory and 41% of known trade routes. More troubling, they have successfully repelled not just the Devourers, but 3 separate incursions by the Void-Touched and completely eliminated a collective mind infiltration of the Perseus Arm. Elder Vorthak Mundar, the ancient slug-like being who had dismissed humanity 3 years earlier, raised his massive bulk with obvious effort. Surely you exaggerate, High Magistrate. These humans are barely past their primitive phase. How could they possibly accomplish what we have struggled with for millennia? The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Keln Tar of the Rigel Commerce Guild, a species that had abandoned the Council 6 months earlier to join the Alliance, materialized in the chamber via holographic projection. Her presence caused an immediate uproar among the Council members. Because, Keln Tar said with evident satisfaction, they actually fight instead of forming committees to study the problem. This is highly irregular, protested the representative from the Ethereal Collective. Former council members do not address this body. I'm not addressing the council, Keln Tar replied. I'm addressing the galaxy. This session is being broadcast on open channels throughout known space, is it not? The Frontier Alliance believes in transparency. High Magistrate Zikith's antennae twitched with annoyance, but the damage was done. By council protocol, emergency sessions were indeed broadcast to maintain public confidence. Now billions of beings across the galaxy were watching as their supposed protectors struggled to address a threat they had initially dismissed. Very well, Zikith said. Explain to us how these humans have achieved what you claim. Keln Tar's scaled features arranged themselves into what might have been a smile. Simple. They share their technology instead of hoarding it. When the Helix Confederation was facing collective mind infiltration, the humans didn't send observers or form fact-finding missions. They sent actual soldiers, scientists, and engineers. Within weeks, every Alliance species had access to the quantum neural firewalls that make collective mind conversion impossible. Dangerous precedent, muttered the representative from the Ascended minds. Advanced technology in the hands of primitive species could destabilize entire sectors. Like the quantum cascade weapons you've been developing in secret for the past 500 years. Keln Tar asked sweetly. The Alliance intelligence network is quite impressive, by the way. The humans have a saying about gathering information. Know your friends, watch your enemies, and never stop learning. The chamber erupted in heated discussions as representatives demanded to know how their classified military research had been compromised. Through it all, Keln Tar continued her presentation with the casual confidence of someone holding all the best cards. The truth is, honored ex-colleagues, you've grown complacent. For millions of years, you've maintained power through carefully controlled scarcity. Advanced technology stays with advanced species. Military aid goes only to strategic allies. Trade routes are monopolized by established powers. The humans took one look at your system and said, "This is stupid. We can do better." And how? Asked Elder Vorthak with heavy sarcasm. Do these enlightened humans propose to maintain order if every species has access to planet-killing technology? They don't prevent access, Keln Tar replied. They make it irrelevant. When everyone can build a quantum cascade bomb, nobody wants to use one because the retaliation would be immediate and overwhelming. Mutual assured destruction, scaled up to galactic proportions. In his private viewing chamber on Earth, former Commander Marcus Chen watched the proceedings with grim satisfaction. His daughter Sarah had been right. The galaxy's old powers were finally being forced to confront the new reality. But Marcus also understood that cornered predators were the most dangerous kind. Sir, his aide said quietly, Admiral Chen is requesting a priority conference. She says it's urgent. Marcus nodded and activated the secure communication system. Sarah's image appeared, and even across light years of space, he could see the tension in her posture. Dad, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements in Council space. It looks like they're mobilizing for something big. How big? Remember the historical records we've studied of the War of Dissolution? This looks bigger. They're pulling ships from every core system, even the home defense fleets. Either they're planning to surrender completely, or they're about to try to wipe us out. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. What's our readiness status? As ready as we can be with 18 months to prepare. The Alliance has been building up our combined fleets, but we're still outnumbered 5-1 by Council forces, and that's not counting their really ancient ships, the ones they keep in deep storage. How long do we have? Best estimate? 3 weeks until their forward elements reach Alliance space, maybe 4 if they maintain their current formation speed. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Humanity had chosen this path when they decided to challenge the established order. Now they would have to see it through to whatever end awaited them. Sarah, activate the Prometheus protocols. Send the message to all Alliance command centers. Dad, are you sure? Once we implement those protocols, there's no going back. The galaxy will never be the same. The galaxy is already changing. Sarah, we can either shape that change or be crushed by it. Across Alliance space, a priority message flashed through quantum communication networks. Military commanders, political leaders, and ordinary citizens received the same simple text. The old powers choose war. We choose freedom. Prometheus protocols are now active. What followed was the largest coordinated mobilization in galactic history. But it wasn't just ships and weapons that moved through space. The Alliance had spent 18 months preparing for this moment, and their preparations went far beyond conventional military thinking. Every Alliance world began broadcasting something unprecedented, complete technical specifications for every weapon, defense system, and strategic protocol in the human arsenal. The quantum neural firewalls that had stopped the collective mind, the nanoscale disruptors that had broken the devourer swarm intelligence, the relativistic kinetic weapons that had shattered void-touched energy forms. More shocking still, they broadcast the plans for building all of it. Within hours, the broadcasts reached Council space. Within days, every major civilization in the galaxy had access to military technology that some of them had spent millennia trying to develop. The careful balance of power that the Council had maintained through controlled scarcity collapsed overnight. But the humans weren't finished. The second wave of broadcasts contained something even more revolutionary: detailed instructions for manufacturing every piece of Alliance technology using readily available materials and energy sources. Planets that had been dependent on trade for basic necessities could suddenly produce advanced starships. Species that had been relegated to client status could build weapons capable of threatening the core worlds. High Magistrate Zisketh watched in horror as reports flooded in from across Council territory. Rebellions were breaking out on client worlds. Previously compliant species were demanding representation in galactic government. Entire sectors were declaring independence and requesting Alliance membership. Stop them, he ordered his military commanders. Whatever it takes, stop this madness before it spreads further. Admiral Vexthus of the Council Defense Force, a veteran of a dozen campaigns, looked at the tactical displays with professional resignation. Sir, it's too late. The information is already distributed. Even if we destroyed every Alliance world tomorrow, the knowledge is out there. The galaxy has changed permanently. Then we destroy the source, Zikth declared. The humans started this chaos. Eliminating them will send a clear message about the consequences of challenging galactic order. Sir, Admiral Vexthus said quietly, with respect, I don't think you understand what the humans have done. They haven't just armed their allies. They've armed everyone. Every species in the galaxy now has access to weapons capable of threatening Council core worlds. If we attack the Alliance, we'll be fighting not just 31 species, but potentially hundreds. Zisketh turned to stare at the strategic display showing the disposition of forces across the galaxy. Red icons representing hostile or uncertain fleets vastly outnumbered the blue icons marking Council loyalists. In less than a week, the careful order of millions of years had been overturned by a species that wasn't even a century into its space age. How? He whispered. How did a species we dismissed as primitive barbarians outmaneuver civilizations that have existed since before their star was born? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Irin Tell, the Council's chief xenopsychologist. News of humanity's victory over the Devourers spread through the galaxy, faster than any ship could travel. The quantum communication networks that connected major civilizations buzzed with urgent messages, intelligence reports, and panicked diplomatic exchanges. For the first time in millennia, the established order of the galaxy had been shaken by the actions of a species that officially didn't even exist in Council records. Ambassador Zara al-Rashid, humanity's newly appointed representative to the Outer Rim territories, stood in the observation lounge of the diplomatic vessel UNS Harmony as it approached Terminus Station. The massive trading post served as neutral ground where representatives from dozens of species conducted business beyond the formal boundaries of Council space. It was here that humanity hoped to make its first real allies. "Incoming transmission from the station authority," announced her aide, Lieutenant Commander James Wright. "They're requesting our credentials and purpose." "Tell them we're here to establish formal diplomatic relations with any species interested in mutual cooperation," Zara replied, watching as the station grew larger in the viewport. Terminus was a marvel of engineering, a rotating habitat nearly 50 kilometers across that housed over 1 million beings from across the galaxy. "Ambassador," Wright said quietly, "I'm reading elevated security protocols around the station. There are at least 12 different fleet elements maintaining defensive positions. This doesn't look like normal commercial traffic," Zara frowned. "Any idea what's got them spooked?" Before Wright could answer, the communication system activated. The voice that emerged was translated from what sounded like clicks and whistles, identifying itself as Harbor Master Trilak of the Centauri Trade Collective. "Human Vessel Harmony. You are cleared for docking at Bay 94. Be advised that station security is at elevated status due to recent incidents in nearby sectors. Please comply with all inspection protocols upon arrival." "Understood, Harbor Master. We'll comply with all requirements." As the Harmony docked, Zara could see the tension immediately. Station security was visibly increased, with armed patrols and scanning checkpoints that hadn't been there during her previous visits. More telling were the faces of the beings moving through the corridors. Fear was a universal expression, and she saw it everywhere. The welcoming committee was smaller than she had expected. Only 3 representatives had come to meet them: Merchant Captain Vexley of the Rigel Commerce Guild, Ambassador Pro Tem Kthln from the Frontier Worlds Alliance, and surprisingly, Submagistrate Yilth from the Galactic Council itself. "Ambassador Al-Rashid," Captain Vexley began, her scaled head bobbing in what Zara had learned was a greeting gesture among her species. "Your arrival is fortuitous. The entire Outer Rim is in upheaval following reports of your conflict with the Devourers." Submagistrate Yilth, a tall, crystalline being whose body rang like wind chimes when he moved, stepped forward. "The Council is very interested in understanding exactly what transpired at Kepler Colony. The Devourers have been a threat to galactic civilization for over 6,000 years. No species has ever successfully repelled a full-scale assault. Until now," Zara said simply. "Humanity defended its territory against an unprovoked attack. We're not looking for praise or recognition. We're looking for partners who understand that the galaxy is changing." Ambassador Kethlin, a tall humanoid with features that reminded Zara of Earth's big cats, spoke in a purring voice. "The frontier worlds have always existed outside Council protection. We know what it means to face threats alone. Your victory has given hope to species who have been written off as expendable." "What do you mean by expendable?" Zara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Vexley's expression darkened. "The Council's protection extends only to core worlds and established trade routes. Species like mine, the Rigel Commerce Guild, exist at the pleasure of the major powers. When the Devourers attack our shipping, we file reports that are noted and forgotten. When our colonies are consumed, we receive expressions of concern but no aid. The official position," Yilth said carefully, "is that resources are limited and must be deployed where they can do the most good. The Outer Rim territories are considered acceptable losses." Zara felt anger building in her chest but forced herself to remain diplomatic. "And now you're wondering if humanity might be willing to extend protection where the Council won't?" "The thought has occurred to us," Kethlin admitted. "Your species has demonstrated both the capability and willingness to fight threats that others flee from. That makes you valuable allies." Over the following days, Zara conducted a series of meetings that revealed the true state of galactic politics. The Galactic Council, for all its supposed unity and wisdom, was fundamentally conservative. The major species maintained their power by controlling access to advanced technology and trade routes. While smaller civilizations were kept dependent and expendable, the Devourers were just one of several threats that plagued the galaxy's periphery. There were also the Void-Touched, beings from dark space who consumed stellar energy and left dead systems in their wake. The Collective Mind, a hive intelligence that converted other species into extensions of itself. The Entropy Cults, post-biological entities that sought to accelerate the heat death of the universe. All of these threats were known to the Council. None were considered urgent enough to merit significant resources. "You have to understand," explained Dr. Shima, a refugee scientist from the Helix Nebula colonies that had been consumed by the collective mind 3 years earlier. "The Council operates on geological timescales. They think in terms of millions of years. Individual species, planets, even entire sectors are expendable if their loss doesn't threaten the overall stability of galactic civilization." "That's not how humans think," Zara replied. "We've never had the luxury of geological timescales. Every generation has had to fight for its survival, which is exactly why the Outer Rim species are so interested in an alliance," Dr. Shima continued. "You think like we do. Survival now, worry about the long term later." The breakthrough came during a private meeting with the Vanguard Coalition, a loose alliance of 12 species that had been defending themselves against various threats for centuries. Their representative, General Korth of the Steelclaw Imperium, was a warrior who understood the realities of frontier warfare. "The humans proved something at Kepler," Korth said, his voice a low growl that needed no translation for aggression. "They proved that the so-called unstoppable forces of the galaxy can be stopped. But more importantly, they proved they're willing to share their methods." "What do you mean?" Zara asked. "Your Admiral Chen transmitted detailed tactical data from the battle to our monitoring stations. She didn't have to do that. Most species guard their military secrets jealously. But your people sent everything. Weapon specifications, tactical doctrines, even the biological agents you used against the Devourer collective consciousness." Zara smiled. "That was Admiral Chen, all right." The woman believed that shared knowledge made everyone stronger, and stronger allies meant better protection for humanity. "General, what would you say to a formal mutual defense pact? Not just between humanity and the Vanguard Coalition, but open to any species willing to commit to collective defense of all member territories?" Korth's eyes, which had been skeptical, suddenly blazed with interest. "You're talking about a counter-council, an alliance based on merit and mutual aid rather than ancient privilege. I'm talking about an alliance based on the principle that every sapient species has the right to exist and defend itself. The Council can keep their core worlds and their careful policies. The rest of us will take care of ourselves." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. Instead of the elaborate rituals and ceremonial exchanges that characterized Council diplomacy, the Frontier Alliance, as it came to be known, was hammered out in direct practical terms. Species committed specific resources, outlined clear mutual obligations, and established command structures based on proven capability rather than ancient lineage. Within 3 months, 18 species had signed the founding charter. Within 6 months, that number had grown to 31. By the end of the year, the Frontier Alliance controlled nearly 40% of the galaxy's territory and represented over 200 billion sapient beings. The Council's response was predictable: first denial, then dismissal, then growing concern as trade routes began shifting toward Alliance space. When the hegemony of Tau Ceti, a Council member for over 5,000 years, formally withdrew and joined the Alliance, panic set in. Sub-Magistrate Yilth found himself in the uncomfortable position of requesting an urgent meeting with Zara. They met aboard a neutral vessel in deep space, away from the monitoring stations and intelligence networks that covered inhabited systems. "Ambassador Al-Rashid, the Council is prepared to reconsider humanity's application for membership," he said without preamble. "Your species has demonstrated significant capabilities, and we believe there may have been some misunderstandings during your initial presentation." Zara looked out at the stars visible through the meeting room's viewport. Each point of light represented thousands or millions of worlds, and many of them now looked to humanity for leadership. 3 years had passed since the humiliation at Nexus Prime, and humanity had not been idle. The rejection by the Galactic Council had sparked something in the human spirit that surprised even their own leaders. Instead of retreating in shame, they had doubled down on expansion and innovation with a determination that bordered on obsession. Admiral Sarah Chen, Marcus's daughter and now head of the Colonial Defense Force, stood in the observation deck of Starbase Omega, humanity's newest deep space installation. Through the reinforced transperistyle, she watched the construction of the 5th Dreadnought-class vessel, a ship design that had emerged from humanity's newfound focus on self-reliance. "Admiral, incoming message from the Kepler colony," announced Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "Priority Alpha." Sarah turned from the viewport, her expression immediately shifting to concern. Priority Alpha meant only one thing: first contact with a hostile force. "Put it through." The holographic display materialized, showing Colonel Janet Rodriguez, the military commander of humanity's most distant colony. Her usually composed demeanor was cracked, stress lines evident around her eyes. "Admiral, we've got a situation out here. Kepler colony is under attack by an unknown fleet. They appeared without warning, ignored all communication attempts, and started targeting our orbital platforms. The attackers aren't using any technology in our databases, and their ships—" Rodriguez paused, her voice dropping. "Their ships are organic, Admiral. Living vessels that seem to grow and adapt as we fight them." Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. "Casualties?" 17 dead so far, but that's not the worst part. These things are consuming our destroyed vessels, literally absorbing the wreckage and incorporating our technology into their own ships. They're learning from every engagement." Before Sarah could respond, another voice cut through the transmission. "Admiral Chen, this is Dr. Elizabeth Hayes at the Kepler Research Station. I've been analyzing the attack patterns and energy signatures. These aren't ships as we understand them. They're some form of biomechanical hybrid, possibly a swarm intelligence. And, Admiral, they're heading for Earth." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Humanity had been so focused on proving themselves to the Galactic Council that they hadn't considered threats from outside Council space. Now something alien and hostile was bearing down on human colonies, and they were completely alone. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," Sarah ordered. "Priority Override 7. Within minutes, she was connected to the United Earth Defense Council. General Harrison Webb, the grizzled veteran who commanded Earth's defenses, appeared on screen. Behind him, Sarah could see the controlled chaos of a command center mobilizing for war. "Sarah, we've been monitoring the situation at Kepler." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that we need to consider evacuation protocols for the outer colonies. These entities, whatever they are, don't seem interested in communication or negotiation. They're treating our territory like a feeding ground." Webb's expression darkened. "Evacuation isn't an option. We've got 3 million people spread across 12 colonies, and transport capacity for maybe a tenth of that number. If we run, we lose everything we've built." "Then we fight," Sarah said simply, "but we need to be smart about it. These things adapt to our tactics. Traditional fleet engagement might not work. What are you thinking?" Sarah looked back at the construction crews working on the new dreadnought. The ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything humanity had built before, but more importantly, it represented a new philosophy of warfare. Humans had always been adaptable, but now they were learning to be unpredictable. "I'm thinking we give these invaders a taste of human ingenuity." "How long until the Phoenix-class ships are ready?" "The first 3 are operational now. 2 more will be ready within the week." "Good. I'm taking personal command of the defense fleet. If these things want to hunt us, they're going to learn why every predator species eventually learns to fear humans." 2 days later, the UNS Defiance led a fleet of 15 human warships to intercept the alien swarm at the edge of the Kepler system. Sarah stood on the bridge watching the tactical display as enemy contacts appeared at the edge of sensor range. There were dozens of them, each one a writhing mass of organic curves and metallic additions clearly scavenged from previous victims. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Park. "It's not directed at us specifically, more like a broadcast to everything in the system." "Let's hear it." The bridge speakers filled with a sound that was barely recognizable as communication. It was like listening to the dying screams of 1,000 different species, overlaid with mechanical grinding and the wet sounds of organic growth. Universal translators struggled with the signal before finally producing a rough translation. "Flesh mines in metal shells. Your resistance feeds us. Your technology strengthens us. Submit or be consumed. The devourer's hunger eternal." Sarah felt her crew's fear, but also their determination. Humans had faced extinction before, during their early days on Earth when ice ages and supervolcanoes had threatened to wipe them out. Each time they had survived by being more stubborn than their circumstances. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Today we face an enemy that thinks humans are just another meal. They've made one critical error. She paused, letting her words sink in. They've never fought a species that turns every setback into a lesson and every loss into fuel for revenge. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you corner a human. The first wave of devourer ships approached with confidence, their organic hulls rippling with absorbed technologies from a dozen different civilizations. They had fought the elegant crystalline hierarchies and absorbed their energy weapons. They had consumed the Vorth Empire's shield generators and the Kalani Federation's faster-than-light drives. Each victory had made them stronger, but they had never fought humans. The lead devourer ship, a massive creature the size of a small moon, launched what appeared to be a boarding assault. Organic pods shot toward the human fleet, clearly intending to deliver troops directly onto the ship's hulls. It was a tactic that had worked against every previous enemy. Sarah smiled grimly. Execute Protocol 7. Across the human fleet, hidden compartments opened and released clouds of what appeared to be metallic dust. The devourer boarding pods flew directly into the clouds, their organic sensors detecting no threat from such tiny particles. They were wrong. Each particle was a nanoscale robot, programmed with one simple directive: infiltrate and disrupt. As the boarding pods made contact with human ships, the nanobots went to work. Instead of trying to destroy the organic vessels, they began rewriting their biological programming at the cellular level. The effect was immediate and devastating. Devourer troops began turning on each other as their shared consciousness network collapsed into chaos. Boarding pods that had successfully attached to human vessels started growing in random directions, their crews trapped inside ships that no longer responded to their commands. "What the hell did you do to them?" asked Captain Morrison from the UNS Retribution, watching in amazement as an entire squadron of devourer ships began attacking each other. "We gave them a taste of human medicine," Sarah replied. "Specifically, a modified virus that attacks their neural network connections. Dr. Hayes theorized that their swarm intelligence depends on biological quantum entanglement. Disrupt that, and they become just another bunch of confused aliens." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Instead of the elegant energy duels that characterized most interspecies conflicts, it became a chaotic melee of biological horror and human ingenuity. Devourer ships tried to adapt to human tactics, but every time they learned a new strategy, the humans had already moved on to something else. When the aliens began jamming human communications, the fleet switched to laser pulse messages that looked like natural stellar phenomena. When the devourers learned to absorb human energy weapons, the ships started firing solid projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. When the organic vessels tried to board human ships, they found automated defense systems that had been programmed by studying Earth's immune system. Hours into the battle, something unprecedented happened. The Devourer fleet began to retreat. "Admiral, they're pulling back to the edge of the system," reported the tactical officer, disbelief clear in his voice. "All remaining enemy vessels are withdrawing." Sarah watched the tactical display as the alien ships regrouped at a safe distance. For the first time in their recorded history, the Devourers had encountered prey that fought back effectively enough to make them reconsider their attack. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," Sarah ordered. "Admiral, they're not responding to our communications. Then we'll send them a message they can't ignore." Sarah activated the fleet-wide broadcasting system, sending her words directly toward the retreating Devourer ships on every frequency and format the human fleet could generate. "You came here thinking humans were just another species to devour. You were wrong. We are the galaxy's newest apex predator, and we've just proven it. Take this message back to whatever dark corner of space you came from. Humanity is off." Commander Marcus Chen stood before the towering crystalline structure that housed the Galactic Council, his weathered hands gripping the datapad containing humanity's application for membership. The building stretched impossibly high into the purple sky of Nexus Prime, its surface reflecting the light of 3 suns in prismatic patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Behind him, his small diplomatic team waited nervously. They had traveled for 6 months through hyperspace to reach this moment, carrying with them the hopes of 8 billion humans scattered across 12 colonies. Earth's children had finally reached the stars, and now they sought recognition among the established powers of the galaxy. The massive doors slid open with a sound like distant thunder, revealing the council chamber beyond. Marcus had seen holographic recordings of this place, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The chamber was a sphere nearly a kilometer in diameter, with representatives from 47 different species arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. Each delegation occupied a section designed for their specific environmental needs, from the aquatic hydralians in their pressurized water tanks to the energy-based luminari, who existed as floating geometric patterns of pure light. As Marcus and his team approached the central platform, conversations died throughout the chamber. Thousands of alien eyes, sensor arrays, and consciousness fields focused on the small group of humans. Marcus felt the weight of their attention like a physical force pressing down on his shoulders. The Speaker of the Council, a towering insectoid creature called High Magistrate Zeketh, raised one of its forearms for silence. Its voice emerged from universal translators as a melodious tone that somehow conveyed both authority and disdain. We gathered today to consider the application of the species that calls itself humanity for membership in the Galactic Council, Zeketh announced. Let the petitioners present their case. Marcus stepped forward, his boots echoing in the vast chamber. He had rehearsed this speech countless times during the long journey, but now the words felt inadequate in the face of such alien majesty. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Humanity comes before you not as conquerors or supplicants, but as fellow travelers among the stars. We have much to offer this great alliance of civilizations. He activated his datapad, and holographic displays materialized around the platform showing humanity's achievements. Images of sprawling cities, advanced technology, and artistic masterpieces rotated slowly in the air. We have mastered faster-than-light travel, developed clean fusion technology, and created art that speaks to the universal experience of consciousness, Marcus continued. Our scientists have unlocked the secrets of genetic medicine, our engineers have built structures that touch the sky, and our explorers have mapped the dangerous regions of space that others fear to enter. A rumble of what might have been laughter emerged from the section housing the Vorthak delegation. These massive slug-like beings were among the oldest members of the council, their civilization spanning millions of years. Elder Vorthak Mundar's translator conveyed amusement as it spoke. Child species, your achievements are indeed quaint, but what you describe as mastery we accomplished before your star was born. Your fastest ships crawl where we leap between dimensions. Your fusion technology is primitive compared to our zero-point energy. Your art. The creature made a sound that needed no translation as derision. Simple emotional expressions from a species barely past its tribal phase. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks but maintained his composure. Respected Elder, we do not claim to match your ancient wisdom, but every species brings unique perspectives and capabilities to the Council. Humanity's youth can be a strength, not a weakness. Youth? The voice came from the ethereal collective, beings of pure mental energy who existed as shimmering clouds of consciousness. You have been spacefaring for less than a century. The newest member before you, the Kalani Federation, had already colonized 3 star systems before your species discovered fire. Representative Kalani Horth, a graceful humanoid with crystalline skin, nodded in agreement. The humans show promise, certainly, but they lack the maturity necessary for council membership. Perhaps in another 1,000 years when they have proven their stability and wisdom. Marcus looked around the chamber, seeing agreement in every gesture and expression he could interpret. The humans had expected skepticism, but not this level of dismissal. They were being treated not as equals seeking membership, but as children asking to sit at the adults' table. What would it take? Marcus asked, abandoning his prepared speech. What must humanity prove to earn a place here? High Magistrate Zizketh's antennae twitched in what might have been consideration. Your species possesses certain crude qualities that occasionally prove useful. You are resilient, aggressive when threatened, and seem capable of rapid adaptation. However, these are the traits of a young predator species, not a civilization ready for galactic responsibility. The galaxy faces no threats that require such primitive qualities, added the representative from the Ascended Minds, a post-biological species that had uploaded their consciousness into quantum computers eons ago. We have achieved a state of peaceful coexistence through superior intellect and careful diplomacy. Brute force solutions are relics of a barbaric past. Marcus felt his team's disappointment like a physical weight. Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's foremost xenobiologist, had tears in her eyes. Engineer Pavel Volkov stood rigid with suppressed anger. Diplomat Lisa Park maintained her professional mask, but Marcus could see the defeat in her posture. "Then we are refused?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Not refused," Zikith corrected. "Deferred. Return to your worlds, young humans. Spend the next millennium learning to control your violent impulses and developing true wisdom. Perhaps then you will be ready for the responsibilities that come with council membership." The dismissal was clear. Security drones, sleek ovoid devices that hummed with barely contained energy, moved into position to escort the human delegation from the chamber. As they walked back through the massive doors, Marcus heard the conversations resuming behind them, the council already moving on to more important matters. The journey back to their ship passed in silence. Only when they were safely aboard the UNS Prometheus, humanity's most advanced vessel, did anyone speak. "Arrogant bastards," Pavel muttered, slamming his fist against a bulkhead. "They looked at us like we were animals performing tricks." "They've made their position clear," Lisa said quietly. "We're not wanted here." Marcus stared out the viewport at the gleaming spires of Nexus Prime. Somewhere down there, representatives of 47 civilizations were making decisions that would shape the future of the galaxy. And humanity had no voice in those discussions? "Maybe they're right," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we are too young, too violent, too primitive." "No," Marcus said firmly, turning from the viewport. "They're not right. They're just afraid of change. They've built their perfect little galaxy club, and they don't want anyone disturbing their comfortable status quo." As the Prometheus began its long journey back to human space, Marcus made a silent promise. Humanity would prove its worth not by begging for acceptance, but by becoming something the galaxy couldn't ignore. The council had called them ugly lions among elegant gazelles, but they had forgotten something important about lions. When pushed into a corner, they learned to hunt in ways that changed everything.